UK is the single best thing that you can do if you want to start your online business, and I feel so passionate about this to the point where I don't have good lighting, I'm sweaty, I've just gone on a run, but I want to make this video, and this video is going to tell you exactly why, if you want to build your online business and if you want to be successful in this world of Wi-Fi money and to actually have like that life of freedom that you see talked about on social media all the time, I believe you have to leave the UK. And it came up to me, it made me realize this at dinner last night, which there was 5 entrepreneurs, me and 4 others, and 4 of us were from the UK, 1 from the Netherlands, and we were discussing just general topics. We were sat having steaks in Bali, living a life that, you know, we're all very happy that we built. But I had this moment when I was sitting there in conversation and I was like, I just cannot believe the stuff that we're talking about. You know, one of the guys is working out how he can build $1 billion SaaS, AI SaaS. Another guy was just casually saying, I'm gonna get to 20, 30 million and then retire and go and make films. And the other guys, the 2 other business partners, were talking about how they can scale their ads offer to the point where they can go and travel in the, you know, wherever they want in the world. And the biggest thing that like occurred to me was the figures that people were talking, and it was like talking about like, how do you get to $1 million? It was like just talking about how do you get to $1 million. And I remembered back to when I was in my corporate 9 to 5 and I was surrounded by people in the UK, and even when I mentioned the word thousands in terms of money, people were like, oh, like there's no way 1,000, like that's like, there's no way you can make 1,000, that's so much money. And I'm not pretending like that isn't a lot of money, it is a lot of money, but in the business world, it's not necessarily a lot of money, right? Like we're talking millions and billions is the currency that people are talking. And it made me realize what being out here has done to my mindset, because instead of sitting at a dinner table and being basically berated for my business ideas, being told everything is not going to work, this idea is not going to work, this idea is not going to work, while I was sat in the UK, I'd have that. And instead I'm now sat in Bali and discussing, how do I build myself to $1 million a month, or how do I build myself to even thinking about hundreds of millions in the space that I'm in. And that is the essence of what I wanted to make this video about, which is I fundamentally believe that since I left the UK, everything has got better in my business. I can tell you that personally in my story, because on the 14th of December, I was sat in Dubai, I had 0 money. 2 months earlier, I'd quit my consulting 9 to 5 with absolutely no backup plan. But about a month after that, so in November, I decided to risk everything with 0 income coming in and about £4,000 in my bank account. I decided I was gonna fly to Dubai, stay with a friend, and gather some momentum for a business idea that I didn't even have yet. And he said that I should come. He's a guy, one of my friends in Dubai, and my God, I'm happy I came, because in that time, since December the 14th, I've managed to accumulate 100K's worth of revenue. Right now, this video is being posted just 3 months after that date, and we've done 100K's revenue. I've got 27 clients, and I'm scaling incredibly quickly. And all of that has coincided with leaving the UK. Literally 2 weeks after I left the UK, I felt that I'd had to set the business up, and I've not looked back since then. And to be honest with you right now, like I'm in a position that I can't really imagine. People around me keep saying you look so happy, and it's genuinely because I can't believe where I'm at right now, the sort of progress that I've made in that 3 months. I can talk about moving to Cape Town, talk about moving to Dubai for a bit, being in Bali right now. And none of this is to flex at all, really, because I told people a year ago this was the life that I wanted to build myself, and I've built it. But it all came back to me to leaving the UK, and I want to go into a few reasons in this video why, if you're watching this right now and you are someone who's considering that online business, who's considering maybe a coaching freelance agency, some sort of online business, why I honestly believe the best business expense that you can go in right now is booking a one-way flight out of the UK. And I've done that. I now live in Bali, but I also then, as I said, booked that flight to Dubai when I had absolutely no money at all. And I guess I want to touch on a few reasons why I believe you need to do that and what genuinely frustrates me the most with the UK. And firstly, I just want to talk about the attitude in the UK, which I kind of touched on at the start there, which is in the UK, if you're an entrepreneur, it is genuinely seen as a humongously risky thing to do. People often quote, I don't think it's 95% of startups fail. People often quote the fact that, a life of an entrepreneur, you're not going to get all the nice dinners and the nice expenses that people get in corporate. And in general, it's just looked down on a lot more. People are not only negative about you taking the risk, but they're also just negative about the ideas you had. And I found this myself myself. When I basically came up, I wanted to do career coaching, and then I was thinking about doing a happiness community about mental health. I had all these ideas, and every single time, without fail, that I came up with an idea, it was always met with resistance and problems. Oh, well, how the hell are you going to charge money for that? Or how the hell are you going to actually create a sustainable business model off that? And it was always, what are the problems and never the solutions? And the thing about entrepreneurship is there are always problems, but there are always solutions. And you want to be around people that see the problems, but also are very quick to come up with solutions. And I found that in the UK, it was just focused on problems. It was always problem after problem after problem. And look, I'm not saying this is the whole of the UK. I have a lot of good friends, and a lot, like my family live in the UK, and I still love the place in terms of the attachment I have to it in that place. But for entrepreneurs, I just think it is the worst place in the world. Well, maybe not the worst place in the world, but it's not a great place to be if you're an entrepreneur, because of that attitude and because of the negativity that you get. And it all starts with what I call the middle class unhappiness trap, which is this idea that you get sold this dream, especially in the middle class world that I'm fortunate but have been in, where, you know, it makes sense for you to go to a good school, and then it makes sense for you to go to a good uni, and the only options you're ever presented at any of those opportunities is, why don't you just go and work in the City of London and become a banker, a consultant, or a lawyer? And that was all I was ever given as an option. It was all I ever considered. There weren't really many times where I even had the opportunity to think, maybe I start my own business, maybe I go and move to Bali, or maybe I go and move to Australia. It was, obviously you want to move to Clapham, obviously you want to become a banker, lawyer, consultant, obviously you then want to get a mortgage in 30 and move into a suburb of London, and obviously you then want to retire at 50 and work in a PE fund or something like that. That was just the only option to me. And I'm not saying there aren't other options out there, and I know there's many people in London who do other things, but for me, my lived experience was that, and I know for most people around me, and for the social media following that I've amassed on this and on my Instagram, and the people that I work with who are looking to escape that, they all feel the same. They all feel like they were never given any other opportunity other than what they do. And that's why I came up with this idea of the middle class unhappiness trap, because you get put on this path that at some point you're like, okay, am I happy doing that? And it comes from this idea of the region-based paradox, which is, if you rate your life between 0 and 10, maybe you do this in your head right now, where would you rate your life? 10 is like bliss, happiness, and 0 is I hate my life. Most people that I found that I was interacting with in London, who were working audit jobs, consulting jobs, finance jobs, they're getting paid well, they got to do things at the weekend, they got to go and use their 25 days annual leave, which is ridiculous as a concept. They got to use their annual leave, and all of that was great, but they didn't feel fulfilled, and there were certain things they were missing. They were working very hard. So they normally rate themselves a 6 or a 7, but the problem that I deemed with this middle class life is that people accept a 6 and a 7, and why I call it a trap is because it comes down to this psychological theory called the region-based paradox, which is the problem with being at a 6 or a 7 out of 10 is that you're not willing to go down to a 4, because the pain isn't quite enough to go down to a 4 in order to have a chance to get to a 10. Because at a 6 and a 7, life is just kind of good. So if your life is kind of good, then why would you take it from kind of good to bad to then risk going to get it to a 10? And that is what I believe that a load of the UK are stuck in. They're stuck in this 6 and 7 where life is kind of good, but they moan about things, and it's, you know, it's a bit frustrating, but at the end of the day, they get on with their life. And I think this is the problem with being an entrepreneur